I look at it from this perspective: is what are the U.S. interests? You know, we don't want the caliphate to return. We don't want the problems of Syria to spill over to the region, have millions of refugees back on the road. And we don't want Iran to have a platform, a superhighway to threaten Israel, which is our closest ally. I got to be honest. I think if you step back and take a look at what the Turks say they're going to do, I'm not sure it threatens any of those interests. I'm sorry.
I really think that they're doing a disservice to the Republic and to the American people if they don't go through the formal process of holding a vote. Why? Look, the power of impeachment is given to the House of Representatives, not to the Speaker of the House. So you need the entire House authorizing this, or a lot of people, besides the president, are going to raise questions about the legitimacy of starting this kind of an inquiry.
And unfortunately, with the NBA and some of the other companies you've mentioned, they seem to be willing to give up the good things that they could be doing in those countries, truly advertising freedom and bringing freedom into those markets. Right. They're willing to give that up just to get more money back at home. And I think Americans, I think we're onto it, yes. But I think we should hold these companies and these sports franchises, we should hold them accountable.
When you talk about a wealth tax, it's not just, as Elizabeth Warren likes to say, going after yachts and diamonds and Rembrandts. No, the vast majority of wealth in this country is actually invested in profitable, productive business enterprises. Go after that wealth, and guess what? All of our standard of livings decline.
And so what we're seeing is an increase in sexual messages directed at children, an increase in the sexualization of children, not just in the culture, but at school. And now I think most startling and most kind of alarming is through the medical and healthcare professionals.
I think this is trying to retroactively make something political for partisan reasons. It doesn't surprise me, unfortunately, that Ellen Weintraub is doing that. Of the people I served with on the commission, she was the most partisan. The practical problem is that there's no way to value information.
This is an unconstitutional program that unfortunately induced a false reliance of hundreds of thousands of DACA recipients into believing that they had some ironclad type of status, and discontinuing it and an orderly wind down of it is the best way to return to the constitutional norms that should govern immigration policy.
Beijing doesn't really like being criticized through popular culture. I mean, I think South Park can join a long, prestigious list along with Winnie Pooh, Katy Perry, and Brad Pitt as several that are actually blocked within China because they've either done things that have been critical of Beijing or just done things that Beijing doesn't like. So I think if anything, it's almost a badge of honor these days to be blocked outside of China, even though it might not be financially beneficial for those companies.
As you mentioned, 55% of people in state prisons are there for violent felonies. So we're talking about 182,000 murderers she wants to let on the streets, 164,000 rapists, 168,000 burglars. And as to the marijuana fantasy that she has, this mass incarceration movement should really be called the mass hysteria movement, because it's hysterical that they think that we're all stupid enough to buy it.
The president was very clear. I only want a big deal. That fundamental position hasn't changed on the president. And I think the North Koreans are continuing to test that proposition. They've seen Bolton leave. Maybe they thought that made a difference. They put a new negotiating team out there. Maybe they thought that made a difference. But they're continuing to press to see if the U.S. is really serious about a big deal. But I got to tell you, as closely as I watch this president, I still think that he is holding out for the big deal, which means a deal that includes denuclearization. It may be phased, but there's a commitment up front to get rid of their nuclear weapons at the end of the process.
The problem is that the pace of change in China now is very, very slow. We had hoped for much more rapid change, a much more direct turn towards free market principles and the rule of law. We haven't seen that in recent years from China, and it'll be up to them to decide if they want to really join the 21st century and the globalized economy as a full partner or not. But that's a societal change that's going to be difficult for them, but it's what we need to see.
Yeah. The real issue there really doesn't have anything to do with sexual orientation or gender identity. It has to do with whether, when judges interpret statutes, are they free to give those statutes new meaning, or do they have to stick with what Congress intended those statutes to mean when Congress passed them?